Be me, name is Garrett. 33 years old, sitting in a Munich beer garden with my German colleagues. We just finished a project 3 weeks ahead of schedule. My boss Klaus raises his glass and says, "Good work. The timeline projections were accurate." That's it. No long speech, no excessive praise. Just acknowledgement of facts. 2 years ago that would have bothered me. Now I understand it's the highest compliment. In Germany, respect is shown through honesty, not through empty words designed to make you feel good. It took me a long time to learn that, and it took an American HR manager to remind me why it matters. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. 3 years ago, I was working at an automotive company in Detroit. Operations analyst, decent job, decent pay. Company was struggling though, losing market share. Then we got acquired by a German manufacturer, Muller Automotive, based in Munich. Big company, 3,000 employees globally, excellent reputation. They kept most of the American staff but offered relocation packages for people willing to work at headquarters. I was 30, single, no real ties to Detroit. Thought it could be an adventure. Applied for an operations manager position in Munich. Got the job and moved to Germany. First week was a culture shock. Not the language, I'd taken German in college. Could get by okay with daily conversations. The shock was how people communicated. My first meeting with my new boss Klaus. He reviewed my transfer paperwork and said, "Your experience is adequate, but you lack European market knowledge. You will need to learn quickly, or you will struggle." I sat there stunned. In America, my boss would have said, "We're so excited to have you on the team. Your experience is valuable and we can't wait to see what you bring." Even if they thought I was underqualified. Klaus just stated facts. I walked out of that meeting feeling like I'd already failed. Called my mom that night, almost ready to quit. She talked me off the ledge. Said, "Give it time. Different cultures communicate differently. Doesn't mean they don't like you." First month was rough. Every interaction felt like criticism. Project meeting, a colleague named Stefan said, "Your timeline estimate is unrealistic. You haven't accounted for supplier delays." In America, someone might say, "Great start on the timeline. Maybe we could explore some additional factors." Stefan just said I was wrong. Directly, in front of everyone. I felt humiliated. But then something interesting happened. After the meeting, Stefan came to my desk. Showed me historical data on supplier delays. Spent an hour helping me adjust the timeline. He wasn't attacking me. He was correcting an error. So, it could be fixed before causing problems. In America, that error might have been gently hinted at. Then ignored when I didn't pick up on the hint. Then blown up into a crisis 3 months later. Here it was identified and solved in one day. That was my first lesson in German directness. It's not about being mean. It's about being efficient. Problems identified clearly get solved quickly. Problems hidden behind nice words fester and grow. Second month, I started adapting. Learned to hear feedback as information, not insults. When Klaus said your report needs more detail on cost analysis, I heard add more cost analysis. Not Klaus hates my work and thinks I'm incompetent. When my colleague Ingrid said this process is inefficient, we should change it, I heard, let's improve this together. Not Ingrid is attacking my work. The adjustment was difficult but liberating. No more guessing what people really meant. No more reading between lines that might not exist. No more anxiety about hidden criticism. Everything was on the surface. If someone had a problem, they said it. If they didn't say it, there was no problem. Simple. 6 months, and I had my first performance review. In America, these were always awkward. Managers would spend 20 minutes praising you, then slip in one vague criticism disguised as an opportunity for growth. You'd leave confused about whether you were doing well or poorly. Klaus's review took 15 minutes. He said your first quarter was below expectations due to learning curve. Your second quarter showed significant improvement. You need to develop stronger relationships with the production team. Your technical analysis skills are excellent. Continue current trajectory and promotion is possible in 18 months. That was it. Clear assessment of past, specific area for improvement, honest projection of future. No anxiety, no confusion, no wondering what he really meant. I knew exactly where I stood. First year, I became a convert to German directness. Started applying it in my own communication. When a team member made an error, I told them directly. Then helped them fix it. No sandwich feedback where you hide criticism between compliments. No hints and suggestions that might be missed. Just clear identification of problems and collaborative solutions. My team's performance improved significantly because issues got addressed immediately. Not weeks later, when they'd become crises. Year 2, I got promoted to Senior Operations Manager. A larger team, more responsibility, better salary. Klaus told me you've adapted well to our culture. Your directness has improved team efficiency. Continue this approach. I felt proud. Not because he'd showered me with praise, but because his factual assessment meant I was genuinely doing well. In Germany, the absence of criticism is the compliment. If they're not telling you something's wrong, you're doing it right. Life was good. Career was thriving. I'd found a communication style that actually made sense. Then everything changed. Muller Automotive's American subsidiary was struggling. Productivity issues, high turnover, low morale. German leadership decided to send support. But American leadership pushed back. Said they didn't need German interference. Compromise was reached. Americans would send an HR representative to Munich to create alignment between cultures. Help Germans understand American communication needs. Her name was Christine Palmer, 41 years old, head of HR development from the Detroit office. Arrived with a mandate to modernize our people practices. First week she observed meetings and interviewed employees. I was one of her interviews. She asked how I found the communication style here. I said direct but effective. I've learned to appreciate it. She nodded but looked skeptical. Said many Americans struggle with German bluntness. It can feel harsh and unwelcoming. I said it felt that way at first, but now I prefer it. She wrote something down and moved on. I got a bad feeling about where this was heading. Week 2, Christine presented her findings to leadership. I wasn't there, but Klaus told me about it afterward. She said the Munich office had a feedback problem. Communication was too harsh and direct. Employees were afraid to make mistakes. The environment was psychologically unsafe. Klaus said the German executives looked confused. They asked for specific examples. Christine cited a meeting where a manager told an employee their work was substandard. Germans asked if the work was actually substandard. Christine said that wasn't the point. The point was how it made the employee feel. Germans said if the work was substandard, the employee needed to know. How else would they improve? Christine said there are ways to deliver feedback that don't damage self-esteem. Germans asked if self-esteem improved bad work. Meeting ended without resolution. But Christine had authority from the American parent company. Muller had taken significant U.S. investment 2 years earlier. Americans had influence even if Germans had operational control. Christine was authorized to implement pilot programs. Testing more supportive feedback methods. Week 3, the pilot programs began. Starting with my department because I was American. Thought I'd be sympathetic to the changes. Christine introduced new feedback guidelines. All criticism must be preceded by positive observations. Use I statements instead of you statements. Focus on feelings and impact rather than facts and outcomes. Never give negative feedback in group settings. Schedule private conversations for any concerns. My German team members were bewildered. Stefan asked why we would hide problems from the group. If something is wrong, everyone should know so everyone can help fix it. Christine said public criticism creates shame and fear. Stefan said hiding problems creates confusion and delays. Christine said we'd try her approach for 3 months. First month under the new guidelines. A team member named Lukas made a significant error in production scheduling. Old approach, someone would say immediately. Lukas, this schedule doesn't account for the maintenance window. We need to adjust. Problem identified. Problem solved. Everyone moves on. New approach. Nobody could say anything in the meeting. Had to schedule a private conversation. I pulled Lukas aside after the meeting. Tried to follow Christine's guidelines. Started with positives about his general performance. Then carefully introduced the scheduling concern. Used I statements about how the error made me feel. Lukas looked at me like I was having a stroke. Said, Garrett, just tell me what's wrong. I said the schedule doesn't account for maintenance. He said, okay, I'll fix it. Why didn't you say that in the meeting? I said, new feedback guidelines. He laughed and said this is ridiculous. But the damage was already done. By the time I'd had my private conversation with Lukas. 2 hours had passed. Production had already started working from the flawed schedule. We had to halt and restart. Cost us half a day of productivity. In the old system, that error gets caught in 30 seconds. Stefan says, Lukas, check the maintenance window. Lukas says, good catch. Fixes it immediately. Meeting continues, no drama, no delay. The new kindness cost us real money. Second month, things got worse. Christine mandated positive feedback ratios. For every piece of constructive criticism, managers had to give 3 pieces of positive feedback. My Germans started gaming the system. They'd say 3 obviously true positives. You came to work today, you're wearing appropriate clothing, you have a computer. Then deliver the actual feedback they needed to give. Christine saw this happening and got angry. Said they were undermining the spirit of the initiative. Klaus defended them. Said they were following her rules exactly as written. If the rules produced absurd results, maybe the rules were the problem. Christine said the problem was cultural resistance. Germans needed to embrace more supportive communication. Klaus said Germans had built one of the strongest economies in Europe, with direct communication for generations. Perhaps Americans could learn from that, instead of assuming their way was superior. Tension between Christine and German leadership grew. Meanwhile, actual problems were piling up. Third month was disaster. A quality control issue emerged in one of our production lines. Parts were slightly out of specification. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to cause problems downstream. In the old system, the QC team member would announce it immediately. But production stops, issue gets investigated, root cause identified. Might lose a day, but problem solved. Under Christine's guidelines. The QC team member was afraid to call out the issue publicly. Might hurt the production team's feelings. Scheduled a private meeting with the production supervisor. But the supervisor was busy with other private feedback meetings. Meeting got pushed back a day. By the time the issue was formally raised, 3 days of defective parts had been produced. Cost us 400,000 euros to recall and replace. Not to mention damaged client relationships. Christine tried to blame the QC team member. Said she should have escalated more urgently. Klaus exploded. Said she tried to escalate through your system. Your system created delays that cost us nearly 500,000 euros. If she could have simply said in the morning meeting, we have a specification problem on line 3. This would have been solved in hours, not days. Christine said she was sorry about the outcome. But the principle of supportive feedback was still important. Klaus asked if principals paid for recalled parts. Relationship between Christine and German leadership collapsed after that. But she still had backing from American parent company. They were committed to the Cultural Alignment Initiative. Said Germans needed to adapt to global standards. Germans pointed out their standards produced better results. Americans said results weren't everything. Employee well-being mattered too. Germans asked how employee well-being was served by chaos and recalls. No answer. Month 4, Christine expanded the program. Despite the opposition. Now all departments had to follow the new guidelines. Positive feedback ratios, private criticism only I statements. German employees were demoralized. Not because of harsh feedback. Because they couldn't do their jobs effectively. Problems that used to be solved in minutes took days. Communication that used to be clear became confusing. Meetings that used to be productive became performances. Everyone saying nice things nobody believed, while real issues went unaddressed. I watched my adopted culture being dismantled by someone who thought she was helping. Started documenting everything. Every delayed decision caused by feedback guidelines. Every cost incurred from slow problem identification. Every employee complaint about the new system. Germans are good at documentation. I'd learned that too. Month 5 employee satisfaction surveys came back. Christine expected vindication. Finally, employees would confirm they felt safer and more supported. Results were devastating for her. Satisfaction had dropped 23% since she arrived. Comments were brutal with German directness. The new feedback system prevents us from solving problems. I feel less respected because managers won't tell me the truth. Hiding criticism doesn't make it disappear, it makes it confusing. I preferred knowing exactly where I stood. Now I have no idea if I'm doing well or poorly. Christine dismissed the results. Said Germans didn't know what was good for them. They'd been conditioned by harsh culture. Couldn't recognize supportive environment when they experienced it. That condescension was the final straw for Klaus. He went to the German CEO directly. Presented 6 months of documentation. Productivity down 18%. Quality incidents up 340%. Employee satisfaction down 23%. Direct costs from delayed problem identification over €600,000. All correlating exactly with Christine's initiative implementation. CEO called an emergency board meeting. Americans and Germans together. Klaus presented the data methodically. Every metric, every incident, every cost. Germans on the board were already convinced. Americans were harder to persuade. Then Klaus did something clever. He asked Christine to respond to a hypothetical. If an employee is doing something wrong that costs money, should they be told clearly and immediately? Or should we schedule a private meeting with positive feedback first? Christine said the private meeting approach was more humane. Klaus asked even if the delay costs hundreds of thousands of euros. Christine hesitated. Klaus said in Germany, we respect employees enough to tell them the truth. Immediately, clearly, without games. We believe adults can handle honest feedback. We believe hiding problems behind nice words is actually disrespectful. It assumes employees are too fragile for reality. Our employees are not fragile. They are professionals who want to do good work. Good work requires honest information. Your approach denies them that information. It treats them like children who need protection. That is not respect. That is condescension. The room was silent. American board members looked uncomfortable. They'd sent Christine to help. Instead, she'd caused over $500,000 in damages and made employees less happy, not more. Board voted to end the Cultural Alignment Initiative. Christine was recalled to Detroit. German communication practices were restored immediately. Month 7 recovery began. First team meeting back under old rules. Stefan identified a scheduling conflict in the first 5 minutes. Said directly, this timeline overlaps with the system upgrade. We need to adjust. No sandwich feedback, no private meeting, no I statements. Just clear identification of a problem. Everyone adjusted their plans immediately. Meeting ended on time with all issues resolved. I almost cried with relief. The efficiency, the clarity, the respect for everyone's time. This is how work should be. Following months, productivity recovered. Quality incidents dropped back to normal levels. Employee satisfaction climbed back up. Germans were relieved to have their culture back. Even the Americans in the Munich office preferred it. We'd all learned that directness wasn't cruelty. It was efficiency, clarity, and genuine respect. Christine returned to Detroit. Heard she was reassigned to a different role. No longer implementing cultural initiatives. Don't know if she learned anything from the experience. Probably still thinks Germans were too resistant to change. Never considering that maybe her change was the problem. Year later, Klaus and I had a beer after work. He thanked me for the documentation I'd provided. Said it helped make the case to the board. I said I was just protecting a culture I'd come to love. He nodded and said, "You understand now why we communicate this way." I said, "I do. It's not about being harsh. It's about respecting people enough to tell them the truth. Trusting them to handle reality. Solving problems before they become crises." He said, "Exactly. Americans think kindness means protecting people from discomfort. Germans think kindness means giving people information they need, even if that information is uncomfortable. Which approach actually helps people improve? The comfortable lie or the uncomfortable truth?" I said, "The truth, obviously." He raised his glass. Said, "Then you are German now." I laughed and drank to that. Highest compliment I could receive. 2 years later, I'm still here. Senior director now, larger team, significant responsibility. Still practicing German directness every day. When someone makes an error, I tell them clearly, then help them fix it. When someone does good work, I acknowledge it simply. No excessive praise that means nothing. Just honest recognition. My American friends back home don't understand. They hear my stories and think my workplace sounds harsh. I tell them it's the most supportive environment I've ever worked in. Because support means helping people succeed, not protecting them from reality. Reality exists whether you acknowledge it or not. Better to face it clearly than stumble through fog. My girlfriend is German. We're talking about marriage. She appreciates that I communicate directly now. Says American men she dated before were confusing. Would hint at problems instead of stating them. Would say things were fine when they weren't. She never knew where she stood. With me, she always knows. If something's wrong, I say it. If everything's good, I don't pretend there are problems. Simple, clear, honest. That's what real respect looks like. Anyway, that's the story of how an American feminist HR manager came to Germany to teach us about supportive communication. Implemented feedback guidelines that prevented honest conversation. Watched productivity crash and quality incidents multiply. Cost the company over 600,000 euros in 6 months. Made employees less satisfied while trying to make them feel safe. And learned that protecting people from uncomfortable truths just creates bigger, more expensive problems. German directness isn't harsh. It's efficient. Problems stated clearly get solved quickly. Problems hidden behind nice words fester and explode. The most caring thing you can do for someone is tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. That's real support, not the fake kindness that lets people fail while pretending everything is fine. Christine thought she was bringing enlightenment, but she was bringing chaos. Thought Germans needed to learn American softness, but Americans needed to learn German clarity. The best workplaces aren't the ones where everyone feels comfortable. They're the ones where everyone knows the truth. Comfort is nice, but truth is necessary. And when you have to choose truth every time.